Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a US political live update, a second live stream for the day. And you might be asking, why the hell are you doing this? Stop torturing us. But the rest of my family aren't feeling very well and they've gone to bed. And because I'm vaxxed up to the max due to being immunosuppressed, I'm feeling all right and thinking, well, what am I going to do with myself? So why not talk about the craziness that has been taking place over the last 24 hours? And I did have an awful lot that I had stored up to talk about. It's like, when am I going to get a chance to do this? Because tomorrow is a busy day and lots going on in the world of the Ukraine war. But this, my goodness, like, Donald Trump is a gift that keeps on giving for those who are interested in politics. He's just at the center of everything because he's nuts. And this is largely going to be about Donald Trump, but in the context, obviously, of American politics. But there are just so many things I have to talk about that it just has to happen. So I welcome to this UK time late night live stream. I have for company my dad, bless his cotton socks. It's a 2024 vintage of blackberry gin. So I've got blackberry gin and tonic picked from the local fields and whatnot. And it basically tastes like glorified Ribena, which is lush. So I've got that for company. And you guys, thank you for being here. And I guess let's talk the speech that took place last night. So I don't know if you remember, obviously most of you know this, you've been watching the news and looking at the YouTubes and whatnot, but yesterday it was announced that Trump was going to make a speech the day before in the White House, going to make a speech that was kind of like one of these things you would expect. Oh, it's a national speech. He's got the attention of everyone. This is going to be a big thing. It's going to be some kind of crisis, or people are thinking invading Venezuela. This is war in Venezuela. And it turns out it was just a supercharged, really quick, almost breathless, motor-mouthed campaign rally speech that was insane. Like, the whole thing was essentially lies. I mean, from start to finish, it was just, some things were so obviously lies that they were just bonkers, and other things need some unpicking, but it was crazy town. And he was rattling through it and you're wondering what's going on here. And so people have been thinking, is this because he's genuinely panicked about the polls that are taking place at the moment that have him underwater all over the shop? Is this a kind of a precursor to tomorrow's Epstein Files release? And actually, we're going to start with the Epstein Files just to give us the context of what's going to take place, or what has been taking place, and essentially understand everything in the context of the Epstein Files. And fingers crossed they do get released, as should be the case. But this speech last night that he gave was, you just left thinking, well, what was the point of that? Well, and you look pretty crazy. So yeah, that's really, we're going to be unpicking a number of things that he talked about during that speech. Okay, so let's get, and by the way, as I always say, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe and share. It makes a heck of a difference to the channel and also keeps you guys up to date with what's going on. So that's always appreciated. Thank you to those who already do. Right, let's go and get stuck in. Okay, so we are going to start with just this, and this could be from anyone. Actually, a number of people have said this. You know, if you're not a fan of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, don't worry, it's from her. Like I said, she says, view all political developments for the rest of the week in light of the fact that the Epstein Files are supposed to be released on Friday. House Republicans just suddenly cancelled congressional session Friday. So this is very important. So they basically told everyone to go home on Thursday evening from Congress. You're like, yeah, you don't need to come in to work on Friday. Why is that? Oh, no, nothing much. Just, you know, Fridays, they're a bit busy, aren't they? I mean, you know, take a day off. I mean, you've had that government shutdown. You've had to come down for that long amount of time you've had off. And I know that must be tiring. So just take another day. Why not? So you got to take a day off. Oh, yeah, might be something. Who was that chap that had that plane? You know, the one with the island. Yeah, anyway, that's what's happening. So House Republicans just suddenly cancelled a congressional session Friday and are sending everyone home Thursday evening. Wow. So House GOP leadership is cancelling Friday votes, letting members skip town tomorrow afternoon instead. So you got Ro Khanna that's come out. He's one of the people with Thomas Massie, the Republican from Kentucky. You got Ro Khanna has said, he's issued a warning that anyone in the DOJ, Department of Justice, who doesn't follow through with the Epstein Files Transparency Act and release the files tomorrow will be charged with obstruction of justice. He also says that Pam Bondi will be held in contempt or impeached if she doesn't cooperate. And you've heard Thomas Massie talk in these terms previously as well. So we will bring the weight of the law against anyone that you know, because this is a discharge petition that's been voted through. And that is yeah, that is that. So we are going to be waiting with bated breath to see what the DOJ actually does and how much they have redacted these, how much they're going to lean into stuff like saying that they have got this open investigation now through Pam Bondi. They've reopened an investigation, so they can't release that because it's an open investigation. That's one of the theories of what might happen. There's also a rumor that there's been a memo sent round today to Republican lawmakers saying you have to distract away from anything that happens tomorrow. If there is anything controversial, call it a hoax, call it a Democrat hoax, and there needs to be chaos. We need to make sure that, you know, there are problems for anyone that wants to shout about the Epstein files and any controversy that comes out. So if that is true, and it wouldn't surprise me, you know, they are gearing up for a really, really controversial day tomorrow. Now, I mean, it's going to be controversial one way or the other. So either the files are out and then they contain lots of claims and data and information that are surely going to be controversial, or there will be huge attempts to redact them and not to release them, which that will then become controversial. So it's going to be a big day no matter what. So anyway, Trump had this speech last night, and essentially, as Governor Gavin Newsom from California says, this basically sums up the speech from Donald Trump. And I think that is a pretty good assessment. Me. Someone else says, not really, it's lie. Yeah. So essentially that's what went on last night. Now, let's go back to our age-old favorite of 600%. We've lowered the price of drugs 600%, 1,500%, 1,400%, 900%. But he keeps repeating it. Here is Trump talking in these terms at that speech last night.
What a difference a year makes. In addition, I'm doing what no politician of either party has ever done, standing up to the special interest to dramatically reduce the price of prescription drugs. I negotiated directly with the drug companies and foreign nations, which were taking advantage of our country for many decades, to slash prices on drugs and pharmaceuticals by as much as 400, 500, and even 600%.
So he's still saying it, and that is mathematically impossible. Well, it's not impossible. It means you're having to pay people to take drugs, and you're having to pay them an awful lot more than they would otherwise cost, because what drugs cost now is 100%. That is our baseline. Whatever drug it is, whatever it costs now, that's 100%. So if you're going to reduce the price of the drugs by 100%, that then becomes free. That's how maths works, my friend. 600%, well, you're starting to pay people to take those drugs. Now, this is the president of the United States who has said this a whole heap of times. He's not been called out on it publicly, and he keeps repeating it. Either he believes it himself, as in he has no understanding of maths, or he's absolutely lying and he knows he's lying. We're going to come to that second point with Anthony Scaramucci in a second. But first, let's have the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, you know, who's rolled out to try and justify this nonsense.
Because some of them were just mathematically impossible.
Listen
to what he said about bringing down the price of prescription drugs. Listen to him.
I negotiated directly with the drug companies.
So as we've heard, so we'll skip that on.
Drug companies are actually paying you to take their product. So it raises the question, how much of last night's speech was hyperbole and how much was fact?
No, what he's saying is you bring it if a drug was $100 and you bring the drug down to $13, right? If you're looking at it from $13, it's down seven times.
It's not a 600%.
Well, but it's 700% higher price before. It's down 700%.
That's not how maths works, mate.
$13 would have to go up 700% to get back to the old one. So it all depends on when you look at it. You could say it's down 87%.
Yes, you could. Say that would be correct. Stop saying you could say this other way. You know, the other way that maths doesn't work. Yeah, that's the way that he's saying it. So, okay, just to be clear, Howard, Donald Trump as president of the United States doesn't understand percentages. Like, can you at least tell us that? I mean, it depends which way you see it. You could see it like this, or you could see it like that. You know, the other way that is completely nuts and no one, whatever, mate.
It would have to go up 700% to be the same one. So it just depends on what you look at it. But basically what he's saying, and we all know what he's saying, is we are hammering the price of drugs down. That's what's happening. And he's announcing it all the time. He's got more announcements even between now and the end of the year. So
I'd love to see the data for that as well. Like, how much has he actually brought the price down? Okay, so now where it gets interesting is this is Anthony Scaramucci, who then gives us a little bit of context to that kind of claim from his own experience speaking to Trump about percentages when Trump made up percentages in Trump 1.0.
Well, they tell him that, you know, in the meetings with him, they say you can't say 600% because the math doesn't work.
Right.
And he says he's going to say 600% because
50% isn't big enough.
No, 50% isn't big enough, and it sounds better. And he did this to us. And again, wasn't in the White House long, but he had a Rose Garden speech. I was standing in the Oval Office. He walked out to the Rose Garden, gave a speech. I think the number was like 85% benefit improvement. He said 96. He came back in. I said, why'd you say 96? He said, well, sounds better than 85. I said, but you're going to get another 4 Pinocchios from the Washington Post. I don't care. Repetition is the mother of memory. That's what Donald Trump would say to you. I'm going to repeat and double and triple down.
So he goes out there and thinks.
And that's a really interesting anecdote there, which is like, I don't care one damn about truth. If I just repeat it enough, it becomes a truth. And that seems very clearly to me to be how Donald Trump operates, but it doesn't even matter if maths doesn't make sense. It's like, yeah, everyone knows what I mean by that. I'm going to pull these numbers out of my backside. Absolutely outrageous. So the other thing, and this was in the speech last night, which was again fascinating because at the time you think, oh, is he? That's quite a bold move. And then of course, you have a look under the bonnet and it is not what's going on. So the claim was from Trump that he is going to give $1,776 to American armed service personnel. Okay, it's 1776. Obviously, that's a very important number. And this is huge. I mean, that's billions of dollars he's suddenly pulling out of, from behind the sofa or wherever. And of course, that's going to make people super happy. So last night, Trump said he was sending troops a Christmas bonus of $1,776 paid for by his tariffs. That's what he claimed. Again, this is another big lie. Would you be surprised if I told you he lied? So Defense One, Trump rebrands congressionally approved troop housing subsidy as warrior dividend bonus. So he said, I'm going to give you $1,776 as a warrior dividend bonus, feeding into that kind of Pete Hegseth idea that these guys are all warriors and blah, blah, blah. Lethality and war fighters. So more than $2.9 billion in reconciliation funds was allocated to beef up troop housing allowances. So it was already funding that was out there that was going to be spent on housing allowances, and now he's just giving it to all of the troops with these 1,776 checks. So dollar checks. So it is, again, he's not telling the truth. Overnight, President Trump's $1,776 check to 1.45 million troops announced Wednesday night to come from congressionally allocated reconciliation funds intended to subsidize housing allowances for service members, a senior official confirmed to Defense One. So he's taking money out of their housing allowances approved by Congress and then give it to them as a bonus. So it looks like it came from him. It's just a shell game with military pay from the ultimate con man. So that's another interesting aspect of his speech. And just to continue on the stats side of things, I talked to you the other day about how he mentioned that he has gained $18 trillion from tariffs. Part of the ongoing tariffs case, SCOTUS required CBP to provide any official tally of tariffs. The total collected is $200 billion. And remember, that's a tax on the consumer in one way or another. But he is saying that they've raised 18 trillion, which is, remember, the entire export value of the world is 25 trillion, not just the US. Like if you add all of the world's exports together from every country on earth, it comes to 25 trillion. So he's saying he's gained 18 trillion. Again, he's just making stuff up. Absolutely making stuff up. Meanwhile, he's increased the national debt by 2.7 trillion. That's not made up. Yeah, economically speaking, things are nuts. Now, the problem is he's got his cheerleaders. So he says, I've made 18 trillion from tariffs. And then you get people like Gunter Eagleman and Eric Doherty, these stalwart online cheerleaders who have a huge following. Trump just took a massive victory lap on the experts. Because of the tariffs we've taken 18 trillion. This is a quote from Trump. There's never been anything like it. The Biden administration took in less than 1 trillion in 4 years. We took in more than 18 trillion in 10 months. That's good. But of course, it's not true. And you got these two people saying the same thing, basically, which is, there is, I think, a centralized information system with the Republican Party, with the Trump administration, that has these people and says, right, you need to say this, go and say this. And these people are just basically serfs to the political landowners of the White House. And speaking of the White House, they have claimed, and I think Trump talked about this in his speech last night. I don't know, so much has happened. Trump delivers core inflation hits lowest level in nearly 5 years. So they've had this big claim that inflation has dropped to 2.7% when it was 3% before, although it's still not the 2% that is their target. And then they're shouting about how wonderful this is. But actually, it's highly controversial for a number of reasons. So as the Associated Press reports, the US says price increases eased last month, but data may be distorted and Americans aren't feeling it. So Labour Department reported Thursday that its consumer price index rose 2.7% in November from a year earlier, yet year over year inflation remains well above the Federal Reserve's 2% targets. Americans, dismayed by high prices, handed big victories to Democrats in local and state elections last month, possibly on the back of this. But now they're claiming we've pulled it down from 3% to 2.7%. But here's the big but, and there are lots of big buts to this. I was just going to say, and I like big butts, and start singing a song, but I'm not going to do that. The inflation report was delayed 8 days by the shutdown, which also prevented the Labour Department from compiling overall numbers for consumer prices and core inflation in October, and disrupted the usual data collecting process. Thursday's report gave investors, businesses, and policymakers their first look at the CPI, the inflation consumer price index, since the September numbers were released on October the 24th. Consumer prices had risen 3% in September from a year earlier, and forecasters had expected the November CPI to match the year-over-year increase. Quote, "It's likely a bit distorted," said Diane Swank, chief economist in the tax and consulting firm KPMG. "The good news is that it's cooling. We'll take a win when we can get it." Still, Swank added, "The data is truncated, and we just don't know how much of it to trust. By disrupting the economy, especially government contracting, the shutdown may have contributed to a cooling in prices." So it could have come down partly because the government was shut down, and so no one's spending money because no one had money, particularly federal employees. So all that time, the longest shutdown in history, you're not going to be spending money, which means that you'll be cooling. It'll be a cooling to inflation. But actually, it's slightly worse than that. Kay High, the global co-head of fixed income and liquidity solutions at Goldman Sachs Asset Management, warned the November numbers were, quote, noisy. The cancelling of the October report makes month-on-month comparisons impossible. For example, while the truncated information gathering process given the shutdown could have caused systematic biases in the data, and many economists don't expect to get a reliable read on inflation until next month. Okay, and it's not just me kind of whinging saying, oh, those look like quite good numbers and I want to try and criticize them because Trump came out with them, so therefore they can't be right. The reason I started looking into this was from these claims. It is worse than you think. So Gordon Johnson here says, why has inflation collapsed? The government stopped reporting the data in October to November. That the media isn't focused on this shame of a report is amazing. It's actually quite funny. They're literally only reporting gas prices and car prices, food plus shelter plus healthcare plus etc. missing. So there's actually loads of missing data from the inflation analysis. And when you look at Trueflation, they go into a bit more detail here. Indeed, this report had so many holes, and all mainstream hears is the headline number derived from the mess of missing or incomplete survey data. A few notes on the latest rather incomplete and surprising BLS CPI inflation release. There seem to be swings and volatility in the government data suggesting incomplete data collection. Some data is missing entirely, suggesting this CPI cannot be treated as a complete read of November inflation. As per the BLS, they started to collect the data on the 14th of November and attempted to collect data for the entire month, which means some data is missing. And then blah, 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 loads of information. But essentially, there are whole columns and rows in certain areas of missing data. It's just, in red, the data is actually missing. In orange, year-on-year and month-on-month data, which can't be calculated without the October data. And so essentially, they're shouting about how wonderful the new inflation stats are when they are completely bogus stats. And you can go and look at, I'm not going to go into all the detail here, but there's lots of detail here as to, you know, why it's all very, very problematic. So just a bit of a warning, you know, this is a bit of a stats bit. And in fact, when you look at the direction of travel from Trump's Liberation Day, inflation seems to be going up and going in the wrong direction. So there is that. Okay, so there's another graph for you, so on and so forth. Right, we're going to move off stats for a second, but essentially, you know, that speech he made last night was just a crazy town. Okay, the news that's coming out today is that Trump's Truth Social company, Trump Media, the umbrella organization Trump Media, is merging with TAE Technologies, which is a nuclear fusion company. What the hell is going on there? Thought to even have Russian backing, by the way, TAE Technologies. So there's an interesting little nugget. But they, I think, are going to be involved in AI data centers, possibly, and energy for them. But anyway, this is a $6 billion merge. So the president of the United States, he didn't divest his interests before coming into power. There's all sorts of ethics violations, and now his media company that owns Truth Social is merging with a nuclear fusion firm in a $6 billion merger. I wonder who's going to make an absolute ton of money off that. How long before TAE Technologies announces huge contracts with the US government, just like Trump Jr.'s back firm got to $620 million in a government contract? Grift, grift, grift. Just like Trump's World Liberty Financial collects foreign bribes. This is the most corrupt administration in history. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, the other day, I almost reported this. An MIT professor and fusion scientist was shot dead at his home. That was, yeah, a little controversial. Don't know if that's got anything to do with anything, but yeah, I almost did report that because some people were saying it is incredibly mysterious. Right. So anyway, we're going to move on from Trump potentially making billions of dollars there, or huge amounts of money. And we're going to move on to I was going to do a video just on this. This is absolutely incredible. If you haven't heard about the plaques that have gone up in the White House, you're in for a treat. And if there's something that tells you If you want to sum up Donald Trump and his administration in a 5-minute segment, this is it. This is Donald Trump all over.
Well, there's this presidential walk of fame, as you've seen, I'm sure, all the portraits of presidents. The one of President Biden is an auto pen that the president has put up. They now have plaques underneath them. Some of them, I was looking at them today, some of them kind of read like a Truth Social post. The one under Biden's calls him Sleepy Joe, says he was the worst president in history. Barack Obama calls him one of the most divisive figures in American politics. What do you make of what we saw of these plaques and the fact that they put them up, and apparently the president himself dictated some of them?
I mean, it's a level of immaturity and petulance and confusion that has probably never been seen in the White House before. But the revealing part of it is that he spends his time on this stuff, just like he spends his time bulldozing the East Wing of the White House and then working on plans for building his Marie Antoinette ballroom and collecting contributions from large corporations which have important business interests before his administration. He's spending his time on nonsense and corruption and just promoting his own self-enrichment. That's all that's going on. And as we saw in this speech tonight, they literally have no plans. They have no legislation for the country. We've been waiting for their health care plan forever. There's nothing there. So what was their big legislation this week before we're about to leave for the Christmas vacation? Their big legislation is Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to put doctors and nurses and medical providers and parents in prison if they engage in gender affirming care for their kids.
And that sums up the Trump administration. So and remember, it was already controversial that he changed the picture of Joe Biden to the auto pen picture. That, like, he takes out, he's so childish. He's so, honestly, as Adam Cochran says, this is truly the most pathetic and unpresidential thing ever done on the White House grounds. Utterly unbecoming of the office and a total waste of taxpayer funds. So the White House has added text to the Wall of Fame next to the Rose Garden. And I'm going to read you some of these just to give you a sense of how immature Donald Trump is. This is what he has written underneath Joe Biden's portrait, which is now no longer a portrait. It's a picture of an auto pen. Sleepy Joe Biden was by far the worst president in American history, taking office as a result of the most corrupt election ever, and it's got his own crazy capitalization. So you know his Truth Social post where he capitalizes random words, and I don't mean the whole of the word, I mean the first letter of the word. So the election is in capital E here. Taking office as a result of the most corrupt election ever seen in the United States, Biden oversaw a series of unprecedented disasters that brought our nation to the brink of destruction. His policies caused the highest inflation ever recorded, leading the US dollar to lose more than 20% of its value in 4 years. His Green New scam surrendered American energy dominance, and by abolishing the southern border, Biden let 21 million people from all over the world pour into the United States, including from prisons, jails, mental institutions, and insane asylums. I don't think he understands asylum seekers. His Afghanistan disaster, that was a Doha agreement written by you, Donald Trump, was among the most humiliating events in American history and resulted in the murder of 13 brave American service members, with many others gravely wounded. Seeing Biden's devastating weakness, Russia invaded Ukraine and Hamas terrorists launched their heinous October the 7th attack on Israel. I'm sure Hamas were really thinking that they were going to attack because Joe Biden. Yeah, I'm sure that was on the top of their mind. Nicknamed both sleepy and crooked, Joe Biden was dominated by his radical left handlers. They and their allies in the fake news media attempted to cover up his severe mental decline and his unprecedented use of the auto pen. Following the humiliating debate loss to President Trump in the big June 2024 debate, he was forced to withdraw from his campaign for re-election in disgrace. Biden weaponized law enforcement against his political opponent while also persecuting many other innocent people. He left office issuing blanket pardons to radical Democrat criminals. I mean, this is hilarious. Trump has pardoned 1,600 people. Just absolutely outrageous. And thugs, as well as members of the Biden crime family. But despite it all, President Trump would get re-elected in a landslide and all caps save America. I mean, that's what he has written. as the biography, if you like, of Joe Biden. It's just insane. Bill Clinton served as Attorney General and Governor of Arkansas before winning the presidency in what was called a major upset over President George H.W. Bush. As President Clinton signed crime and welfare legislation, which was passed, blah, 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 blah. NAFTA, which President Donald J. Trump would later terminate as being bad for the United States, welcomed China into the World Trade Organization and oversaw NATO's military intervention in Bosnia and Kosovo. Despite the scandals that plagued his presidency, the tech boom of the late 1990s resulted in excellent economic growth, which helped him and Republicans in Congress deliver balanced budgets for the first time in decades. In 2016, President Clinton's wife, Hillary, lost the presidency to President Donald J. Trump, ! So even there, he had to get Donald Trump in twice into that, talking about NAFTA, getting rid of that, and Bill Clinton's wife losing to Donald J. Trump. It's just me. And then this is an insult here. So Reagan, and I want to just talk about this in a second. He says, Ronald Reagan won the Cold War and transformed American politics, blah, 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 blah. It talks about moral clarity, survived being attacked by assassin. And then at the end, he says he was a fan of President Donald J. Trump long before President Trump's historic run for the White House. Likewise, President Trump was a fan of his. Now, just to give you a bit of info here, Ronald Reagan died in 2004, I think. He had Alzheimer's for 10 years. So what is he saying? He was a fan of Donald J. Trump in 1994. Okay, whatever, mate. Whatever. Yeah, so he's squeezing himself into Ronald Reagan's bio, and then we've got Obama. Barack Hussein Obama was the first black president, a community organizer, one-term senator from Illinois, and one of the most divisive political figures in American history. As president, he passed the highly ineffective, scare quotes, Unaffordable Care Act. So it's just like it's playground stuff here. Can't even call it the ACA or the Affordable Care Act. It's the Unaffordable Care Act, resulting in his party losing control of both houses of Congress and the election of the largest house, blah, 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 and signed a one-sided Paris Climate Accord, both of which were later terminated by President Donald J. Trump, blah, 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 blah. And then goes on, and then says Obama also spied on the 2016 presidential campaign of Donald J. Trump and presided over the creation of the Russia hoax, the worst political scandal in American history. And his handpicked successor, Hillary Rodham Clinton, would then lose the presidency to Donald J. Trump. So he's already included that part in Bill Clinton's part, and now he's got it. Oh, it's just honestly. And then I'm just going to show you one more. So this is Andrew Jackson. Right, here's an image of Trump's plaque on Andrew Jackson that I've obtained, in which he somehow inserted himself into that as well. Truly incredible stuff. So let's see where he is in there. So this Jackson was often called the people's president for championing the common man, but was unjustifiably treated unfairly by the press, but not as viciously and unfairly as President Abraham Lincoln and President Donald J. Trump would in the future be. Just really, it's just honestly, like, if anyone is still a fan of this man, really, I mean, he's pathetic. This is pathetic. This is like, honestly, epic level patheticness. Like, if you could do the definition of narcissism, in plaque form, it is this. This is plaque narcissism. Just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Okay. Just moving on from that, I just want to just throw in there that he's going to start war with Venezuela, probably. And he's not going to ask Congress, probably, because he's just kind of told us.
Thank you.
Mr. President, will you be seeking any authorization from Congress for any land attacks on cartels in Venezuela?
For anyone?
For any land attacks on drug cartels in Venezuela?
I wouldn't mind telling him, but it's not a big deal. I don't have to tell him. It's been proven. But
I don't have to tell Congress it's been proven. So you can just unilaterally go to war. I mean, there is a 60-day thing, and there are this is very dangerous talk here, because I think you're starting to see him talk openly about the unitary executive theory and a complete disregard for Congress and possibly the judiciary as well. And this is the conversation. This is the rhetoric of a dictator, as far as I'm concerned.
I wouldn't mind at all. I just hope they wouldn't leak it. You know, people leak it. They are politicians and they leak like a sieve. But I'd have no problem doing that.
Says the man who they don't tell him intelligence anymore in certain contexts because they know he'll just put it out on Truth Social. Yeah, sure, Trumpy. Okay, then this is, I mean, we've gone from plaque narcissism through Venezuela to now another form of narcissism. This is cultural center narcissism. And this is another example of just, well, I don't know, Trump, I guess. This is Trump. This is peak Trump. This is peak plaque equivalent Trump. So for those who don't know, the Kennedy Center in the United States is this cultural center where they have sort of plays and arts and music, but cultural, you know, highfalutin stuff. It's a cultural center, really, associated with the government, and the center is called the Kennedy Center as a memorial to Kennedy, right? The Kennedy Center is a living memorial to a fallen president and named for President Kennedy by federal law. It can no sooner be renamed than can someone rename the Lincoln Memorial, no matter what anyone says. Well, it turns out that Caroline Leavitt and the White House have a different idea. I have just been informed, says Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, that the highly respected board of the Kennedy Center, some of the most successful people from all parts of the world, have just voted, this is a key point, unanimously, to rename the Kennedy Center to the Trump Kennedy Center because of the unbelievable work President Trump has done over the last year in saving the building. Do you know who's head of the board of directors? What's his name? He's quite similar to the Trump Kennedy. Oh, it's Donald Trump. Yeah, no, he's head of the board, isn't he? Yeah, okay. Because of the unbelievable work President Trump has done over the last year in saving the building, not only from the standpoint of its reconstruction, but also financially and its reputation. Of course, actually, they're really struggling to sell tickets now because they're now cancelling all kind of woke stuff or whatever. Anyway, congratulations to President Donald J. Trump, and likewise, congratulations to President Kennedy, because this will be a truly great team long into the future. The building will no doubt attain new levels of success and grandeur. Trump appointed this highly respected board himself and now serves as its chair. It includes the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, Communications Aide, Don Scavino, Political Operative, Sergio Gore, and other major donors and Trump allies. I wonder why they've renamed it then. My goodness. But actually, it wasn't unanimous, as we'll find out in a second. So he was asked about this. Let's listen to him.
That was an easy one.
She just posted on X, her press secretary, that the board members of the Kennedy Center voted unanimously to rename it the Trump Kennedy Center. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I was honored by it. The board is a very distinguished board, most distinguished people in the country. And I was surprised by it. I was honored by it. You know, we're saving the building. We saved the building. The building was in such bad shape, both physically, financially, and every other way. And now it's very solid, very strong. We have something going on television, I guess, on the 23rd December. I think it's going to get very big ratings. And the Kennedy Center is really back strongly. It's in very bad shape, very, very bad shape physically.
So I just thought I'd rename it after myself. I mean, yeah, it's a board. Oh, I was so surprised when they told me. Yeah, because you didn't ask them to do that. Like, the answer should be no. I don't think I should be named. I mean, that is after JFK, right? I mean, you know, it's important that his memory is maintained in the name of the building. It should, you know, I'm building a triumphal arc. Surely I'll be happy enough with just having that named after me. The Arc to Trump, the Arc to Trump. So anyway, the Kennedy Center can only be renamed by an act of Congress, is what many people are now saying. And that could be a bit of a problem for this process. And then the idea that it was unanimous as well is actually contested. For the record, says Representative Joyce Beatty, this was not unanimous. I was muted on the call. So she obviously sits on the board, and she was muted on the call and not allowed to speak or voice my opposition to this move. Also, for the record, this was not on the agenda. So it wasn't even on the agenda to talk about in their meeting, obviously. This was not consensus. This is censorship. There you go. So, and then you got Maria Shriver, who is in the Kennedy family. And of course, you know, former wife of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. She says the Kennedy Center was named after my uncle, President John F. Kennedy. It was named in his honor. He was a man who was interested in the arts, interested in culture, interested in education, language, history. He brought the arts into the White House, and he and my Aunt Jackie amplified the arts, celebrated the arts, stood up for the arts and artists. It is beyond comprehension that this sitting president has sought to rename this great memorial dedicated to President Kennedy. It is beyond wild that he would think adding his name in front of President Kennedy's name is acceptable. It is not. Next thing, perhaps he will want to rename JFK Airport, rename the Lincoln Memorial, the Trump Lincoln Memorial, the Trump Jefferson Memorial, the Trump Smithsonian. The list goes on. Can we not see what is happening here? Come on, my fellow Americans, wake up. This is not dignified. This is not funny. This is way beneath the stature of the job. It's downright weird. It's obsessive in a weird way. Just when you think someone can't stoop any lower, down they go. And of course, the reality is that this is dictatorial. Really, this is what you would expect to see in an autocracy and a dictatorship. It's just par for the course. Now, moving on to kind of the final section of this video. God, I might finish under an hour tonight. Who knew? That's a first, isn't it? So here we have Trump today. So this isn't from his speech yesterday. Trump today in the White House while RFK Jr. was speaking, talking about Kennedy's, and Trump was really trying not to fall asleep. But as people have noted, actually the side of his mouth is drooping again. And we've seen this before. And this goes back to the idea of whether he's had mini strokes and whether the medicine he's on is making him tired. That's another theory.
And if you don't have standardized dosing, any study that you do is comparing apples to pears. And we don't know the difference between botanicals and synthetics, and all of these questions we're now going to be able to answer. 5 administrations have promised that. Anyway,
he basically just kind of falls asleep and whatnot. But the idea is you're seeing on one side of his face a pronounced droop, which is, and I know this is all, that's speculation, blah, blah, blah. But seriously, if my mouth was doing that, I would be going to the doctor and saying, is there something I should be worried about? And do you know what the doctor will probably say? You need to go for an MRI, mate. So Trump's been having these MRIs and they're saying, I don't know what they're MRIing. Who knows what they're taking pictures of? And then he's got bruises on his hand, which he's trying to protect there. By the way, I think in this, he's hiding his hand. He's falling asleep. He's got swollen ankles. You know, the man is not in a good way. I just see if there's any commentary. This whole effing scene is just, I mean, he's hunched over, clutching his black hand. His face is drooping. He can't stay awake, and he's surrounded by white coats. Lunacy. Yeah. So, but he is the best, strongest, smartest man in the world for sure. Like, there's no doubt about that. I did wonder. I almost said that myself. In fairness, I'd fall asleep and had to listen to RFK. You got a good point. Well made. He had a stroke. We all know it, says Cheryl. Yeah, I think something's wrong, right? Something is definitely wrong. Now, more nuts things. This came out today. Just like it's almost a self-parody. Like it's almost. Do you reckon someone in the government is just behind him, just taking the piss, just going, oh, they're having a laugh. There's a couple of people. Oh, what should we do with Trump today? oh, should we, you know, everyone's saying it's becoming like a dictatorship and it's all getting dystopian. Yeah. Have you ever read The Hunger Games? You know, that dystopian like future, which is like screwed up, kind of weird capitalism, but like feudalism and weird thingy. And they have these contests where it's the last person surviving, and they come from the different districts, the different states around the US, and they have to compete against each other. Yeah. I've seen that. I've read those books and seen those dystopian films. Yeah. Well, should we get Trump to announce some kind of sporting event that totally parallels that everyone in the know will go, yeah, that's dystopian, but actually Trump won't have a clue because it sounds really cool. Yeah, let's do that. Should we do that? Should we see if we can get away with that? Let's put that piece of paper in front of him. It's like, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if you got people genuinely just like trolling Trump and getting him to say nuts things and then laughing all the way to the bar that night. But anyway, just in case you don't know what he has announced, this is what he's announced.
In the fall, we will host the first ever Patriot Games, an unprecedented 4-day athletic event featuring the greatest high school athletes, one young man and one young woman from each state and territory. But I promise there will, in the fall, we will.
So there you go. He's announced an unprecedented 4-day athletic event, one young man and one young woman from each state and territory. I knew we were in late stage capitalism, but I didn't realize we were in Hunger Games late stage capitalism. Yes, just pretty incredible. So there you go. That's been announced today. Right. Okay. What else has gone on? Now, I said to you 2 days ago when I did my last I did a live stream, didn't I? And I said Dan Bongino is going to quit. He'll either do it this week or he'll do it by mid-January. Turns out less than a day later, he has indeed quit. So Dan Bongino, who is the deputy head of the FBI, and the background to this is essentially Bongino was this essentially YouTuber influencer before he became deputy to the FBI, because of course that's all you need to be, just some kind of podcaster. Maybe I could be president. Oh no, I wasn't born there. Damn. Maybe I could be in charge of the FBI. Yeah, you just need to be on YouTube, don't you? But anyway, Dan Bongino, so he's a conspiracy theorist, wanging on about the Epstein files. Then with Kash Patel, both of them were like podcast influencers spreading stuff on these different podcasts, whether they were invited on or running it themselves. Then they came to actually run the FBI, and then they had to kind of go back on all their wildest of claims, which either made themselves look like they were full of shit for the last 2 or 3 years, or made it look like they were covering up the truth in the same way that they were accusing the previous FBI of doing, and that they had become then the deep state themselves. So there was like this real dilemma for these two. Anyway, he's really struggled. He's had these arguments with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and he was odds on favorite to be one of the first to go. I suppose if you say Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, he was the fall guy for the Signal Gate. You remember the messaging that Pete Hegseth was really responsible for, but that got out, and they had the journalist on the calls on the group, and that was all controversial. You had Signal Gate 1 and then Signal Gate 2. Hegseth is still there, amazingly, but Mike Waltz went and got moved sort of sideways. I think he's to do with NATO team now, isn't he, or the UN team, or something. Anyway, Dan Bongino though has now walked, and this is not wholly surprising. Dan Bongino's quit. House Republicans just cancelled congressional session Friday and are sending everyone home Thursday. They all know something is coming at the end of this week, and they don't want to be around to answer your questions. Do you think Dan Bongino has handed his notice in precisely because it's, well, Epstein Files Friday, let's call it? Is it all connected? I'm sure there's a lot in that. Now, Bongino, MS Now, which is what used to be MSNBC, it's now being spun off. MS Now asked Bongino for a comment on a story that he was leaving his position in January. And he said at 12:55 p.m., print whatever you like. No one believes you anyway. Which is like, yeah, whatever. I'm not quitting. Print whatever you like. No one believes you. And then by 5:16, Bongino and X, I'll be leaving my position in January. So that's what he said. He's leaving it in January. He's on his way out. But I love this interaction that Dan Bongino had with the author Stephen King, but he doesn't know who Stephen King is. Dan Bongino, Biden is a disgrace to humankind, an embarrassment to the human race in every respect. Stephen King, who's very active on Twitter, by the way, from a liberal point of view. Yes, but he's got a real job, not a podcast. Dan Bongino goes, yeah, you're right. Millions of listeners a day on a podcast while you're watching porn in your mama's basement, yearning for the days that people actually give a shit about your dumb ass. Nice comeback, dipshit. Get a job, loser. It's like Stephen King, the most famous author on earth. I would probably put him in the top 3 most famous authors on earth at the moment. Who's got a very good job, thank you very much. And he's loaded, no doubt. But he's like, yeah, you're having a go at me, but I've got millions of listeners a day on my podcast, says Bongino. Who are you? What have you got, Stephen King? You big loser. Stephen King. Oh, okay. Yeah, well done, Dan Bongino. Use those skills in the FBI. Yeah, we've arrested this guy. It's Stephen King. We think you know who that is? He's a freaking author. No, it's just, I thought, okay. Yeah, well done, Bongino. Good skills. Now, I'm wondering, so in light of all this stuff that's going on, the kind of chaos, but also the economic numbers and also decisions to go to war with Venezuela, the way that he spoke to or about Rob Reiner and his wife, and you're starting to get this pushback from a number of people. Cracks are starting to form. You had a vote yesterday on the ACA, wasn't it, that Mike Johnson lost. So the Republicans lost a vote as people crossed the floor to vote for a discharge petition, a different discharge petition that will then bring about a vote for the ACA, Affordable Care Act, in January. So Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, can't control his caucus, right? His Republicans. And you're starting to see all these cracks appearing, and the Democrats are winning all of these special elections, or their massive swings Democrat way. And it's all looking quite challenging for the Republicans. The glue that holds the Republicans together, and by that I mean the whole of the party and the base and the whole movement together, the glue that holds them together is the media. And by that I mean Fox, OAN, Newsmax, and social media, but particularly Fox. So you've got a lot of mainly older people that will watch Fox News absolutely religiously, and then there are people in my threads, in the live threads. Actually, we haven't seen Lynn for ages. Where's Lynn gone? But her husband, she always talks about him, just watches Fox News and just can't admit anything that exists outside of what Fox is telling him, and so on and so forth. And you get all these sorts of people that fit into that kind of mold. But I've been wondering, there's been a few instances recently where Fox have been a bit more holding Republicans to account in a way that they freaking should, but they've become, we're so used to them now being this megaphone for the Republicans, that we just don't see enough of them just doing normal journalism, which is where, for example, when we had Howard Lutnick be challenged on a 600% by Fox News, yeah, of course you should be doing that. Why is it taking you months to actually get off your asses and challenge someone about these overt lies that are taking place? But I'm wondering whether you... Okay, the bigger... Sorry, I've had this discussion with myself today in my head, where I was wondering, like, if I was Murdoch, right, or Murdoch's sons, or whoever's properly running Fox these days, and a bit like Donald Trump, any powerful entity wants to back a winner, right? In the same way that Donald Trump looks at the war in Ukraine and sees Russia as just the necessary winner. That's partly why he finds it so difficult to back Ukraine. So you just can't imagine Ukraine winning or prevailing. So he just wants to back a winner. He doesn't care about the morality of the situation. So for the Murdoch family, they don't care about the morality of who rules in the US, because you know, they should be able to, they're kingmakers, right? And they have all that power. They would prefer Republicans, right? Because of, you know, that's their wheelhouse, and you know, tax and regulation, all that kind of stuff. But if they admit that Trump's not going to rule after 2028, they need to start thinking about who's after Trump. And I wonder whether there's going to be a moment soon where Fox News go, we can read the tea leaves, and his popularity is absolutely tanking. In fact, there was another, they were showing the polls. Someone on Fox News was challenging someone else over Trump's economy stats, which were 72% against 28% for. Like 28% of respondents in there, I think it was a Fox News survey, said Trump's economy is excellent. 72% were like, no, it sucks. And they were really hauling someone over the coals over this. And I'm sort of wondering whether they're reading the tea leaves to the point where, like, if we keep backing Donald Trump and he's being so egregious and he's saying these horrific things, then actually it starts to taint us, and we need to be kingmakers. So I wonder whether it's not that they'll back a Democrat, but whether they look at someone like Marco Rubio and start getting behind him, or Ron DeSantis, or you start seeing them help to take apart Donald Trump and dethrone him, or something, some kind of middle pathway. I'm just playing around with these ideas, because if I was in a board, like as this kind of sociopathic leader of Fox News, I would be like, how do we maintain our supremacy here? Because we're looking at everything at the moment, and Donald Trump is getting roasted all over the shop, and Republicans are starting to have the guts to stand up to him. Perhaps this is the time to stop supporting him to the hilt and actually get behind someone else. So yeah, I'm just thinking that could well happen, but I don't know. Anyway, this is Fox attacking JD Vance for saying the economy is strong.
This, as a new Fox poll shows, only 11% of voters think they're getting ahead with their finances. 44% say they're falling behind. Vice President Vance said, hey, we've got to have some patience. Kevin, when will people start to feel things tangibly improve?
Well, I mean, right now, if you look at what's happening with the lower inflation and the higher wages, you saw in the jobs report that that the latest wage number was that wages for the typical worker were up 3.7%. So if you're running 3.7% wage increases at 1.6% core inflation, then real wages are growing at a rate of about 2.5%. By our estimates right now, blue collar workers have already seen an almost $2,000
so on and so forth, and he gives his answer. But the point is that you know, that is quite a critical question, and if you listen to the tone of Ed, what's his name, Vancine? Oh, I forget his name. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I get a sense that Fox could be going that way. Kevin Hassett's an interesting one. I was listening to someone the other day saying I was having, it might have been, I don't know, was it Catty K, talking about being at a dinner with Kevin Hassett with Trump there. Was it when he was getting roasted or something? And then Hassett was laughing, and then he saw that Trump looked at him and said, oh, I better stop smiling, the boss is looking, or something like this. Is understanding that I've got to toe the party line. I will laugh at Trump, and I will, you know, behind the scenes probably think he's a douchebag, but I get wheeled out and say all these things because I'm a dutiful kind of servant of the master type thing. But there you go. Okay, just a couple more things I'm going to share with you, then go on to a couple of your comments. I just wanted to show you this, and it's not that I am some super woke liberal lefty, although I probably am, but it's just I think this does tell you something. So this is I believe the entirety of the White House interns with Donald Trump here, and every single intern here is white. And I just think that might tell you something. When you have Stephen Miller in the White House as an actual fascist, and you've got Elon Musk doing, you know, Hitler signs and whatnot, salutes. And you're thinking, well, who would want to go and work in the White House? And also, they're probably vetting people. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, your skin's a little bit dark for my liking. You ain't coming in. It's just, I don't know if you would ever have seen this in previous White Houses. I'm fairly sure this is telling you something. As this source says, so much diversity in this photo. In the White House interns, you have tall white people, short white people with blonde hair, white people who are brunettes, white males and white females at the White House. Yeah. I don't know. I think that tells you something. That photo there, I think, definitely tells you something. Right, and then the last thing we are going to see, look at, is this. So just another, I think, dimension, another aspect of this chaotic White House, or what's left of it. Trump has, as I said the other day, knocked down the East Wing. Then he sacked the architect who said, what you want to build is impossible. And he said, no, it's not. You're sacked. So now he's knocked down the East Wing and he's got nothing. They're not doing anything. He's got nothing to build. Like, he hasn't got plans. There are no plans. This should be what Fox News is going nuts about. Absolutely nuts about. But they're not at all. Then there's this. I mean, this is him with the model. Just honestly, do you notice anything about the ballroom in relation to the White House? Oh, yeah, it's 3 times as big as the White House. Of course, the architect said, that's stupid. No, Donald, we're not doing that. Absolutely insane. Just honestly, this whole White House is just nuts. I don't know if, maybe he's here. The Trump appears to have 2 models. Maybe one is just a particularly large one. I don't know. One is definitely larger than the other. But the larger one is one that he would want. Absolutely, for sure. So anyway, that's 24 hours. That's just 24 hours. That's what we've done. We've looked at essentially 24 hours in the life of the White House and Donald Trump. And it's crazy. Anyway, let's get on to some very kind people. Mark Vucha, thank you, matey. Gifting 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. You're super generous. He is in the United States of Canada, and I do appreciate that kindness from all the way up north. Must be cold there. Richard Bennett, 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Really do. And Mark Biscues being super generous again. As Trump is in office for 3 more years, alcohol consumption around the world is up 1,976%. This is towards your next purchase at the little whiskey shop. And sad enough, Mark from the little whiskey shop has told me that they had 2 people that came in the shop today and stole some stuff, and they lost 1,338 quid's worth of stuff. So I said to Mark, I'm going to have to order some more Ukrainian wine from you. So that's what I'll do, and I'll do that with your help. So thank you, Mark. So there you go. That is where we're at today. The crazy world of American politics. It just blows my mind away that every day I open up the socials and I'm just like inundated with insanity. The big thing to look for though tomorrow, guys, is of course the Epstein files. What will they do with them? And actually, so this is a really good point. I did mention this the other day, by the way, in my previous US political update, because he was on camera blaming Biden for, he literally, what were his words? It's something like, you'll find that every single problem that we have in the White House, the foundation of every single problem we have is Joe Biden. And he blamed Joe Biden for everything, like formally, explicitly for everything. So as Istar Brach says Vance was blaming Biden for the recent US unemployment figures. His reasoning was the same people were out of work during Biden, but undeclared, then now just decided to declare their employment status. I mean, it's just the hoops they will jump through to try and evade any kind of responsibility. But this is, you've got to understand that, is it Ray Cohn, the guy, the lawyer guy from the McCarthy era, involved in the McCarthy trials? He was a guy that was friends with his dad, and Trump was his protege. And there are several things that Cohn told him. He said, you know, sue for everything, because you never take responsibility. And he said, never say sorry, never admit it's your fault for anything. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but if you understand the influence of Ray Cohn on Donald Trump, you understand Donald Trump, which is he will never, ever take responsibility for anything negative, but will happily take responsibility for anything positive, even if it's someone else's doing. He will take responsibility for it. You'll see him do that in a moment with all the Biden. So Joe Biden had the Infrastructure Act, didn't he? And all the funding that was going out to these different states to build infrastructure to stimulate the economy post-COVID. Yeah, one of the good things that the Biden administration actually got achieved, you know, they got a load of stuff achieved in the Chips and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the infrastructure bill. And the infrastructure bill was interesting because, well, it's interesting now because you've got these placards that are being replaced by ones that say Donald Trump did this type thing. It's like, but you didn't do that. You literally, that wasn't you. It's the opposite of you. In fact, in Trump 1.0, you tried for 4 years to do something about infrastructure, and you failed in the same way that you failed to come up with a healthcare alternative. And you've had 4 years in between that, and then another year now, and you still don't have a healthcare initiative. What Jamie Raskin was saying earlier was absolutely right. Trump's achieved kind of nothing apart from these kind of the big, beautiful bill. That's his signature thing, which is tax cut for the rich. And, you know, deregulation and get rid of the welfare state. That's what he's done. Whereas Biden actually achieved, but, you know, say what you like about Biden, he stimulated the economy, the American economy. Yes, inflation was a problem, but it was the smallest problem in the developed world, as Biden actually got the American economy to be operating better out of COVID than any other nation, comparable nation. But because people don't understand, I remember being on holiday this year and speaking to two people from Pennsylvania, and it was a man and wife, and they were both nurses actually, and she was a school nurse, and she was saying, look, I was voting Kamala Harris. He was going to vote Trump on the economy because he said Biden didn't do a good job with the economy, and because we knew we'd cancel each other out, we didn't vote in the end. But he had then come around, and we're chatting in the pool bar, and he was slagging off Trump a treat. So he had completely flipped. But he said, yeah, at the time, like, Trump was going to be the better one for the economy because Biden's economy and inflation. And then I explained to him that, do you realize that actually the American economy was operating better than all the comparable economies around the world? And he didn't have a clue, because for many Americans and for many people in general, like for British people, you look at how your country is doing, but you don't look at it because you just have your own lived experience, right? But you don't look at it in the context of how well it's doing against other countries. So, and you can understand that, but the problem is, to get a proper grip on how well your leadership is doing. We live in global times where recessions, a COVID pandemic was a global recession, hit that, you know, supply chains were here. It was something that affected the whole world. And so actually you need to understand how well your guys did, your leadership, your government did, compared to everyone else in steering your country out of a real crisis. And it's going to be bad, because coming out of a pandemic is going to be economically very, very difficult. But the question is, yeah, but have we done comparatively actually a lot better than everyone else? And therefore, even though it's bad now, and even though I'm feeling the horror of inflation on my pocket and in my life, actually he's done as good as he possibly could in the circumstances. But very few people have that kind of, and the problem for the Democrats is that was a kind of narrative they're trying to sell, which is, well, actually, if you look at the stats, the economy is pretty decent. I know you might be feeling it in the pocket, but really, blah blah blah, and that doesn't, you know, really sell it to people. Unfortunately, people are much more intuitive and emotive, and it's quite difficult. So anyway, yeah, what my point of where I was going is that Trump is now putting placards up around these kind of building sites where they're building, I don't know, a flyover or something, and saying this is Donald Trump's done this because I'm the president. It's like, actually, no, that money, that was a Joe Biden bill, and the money was voted on predominantly by Democrats. And many Republicans, there are loads of stories about Republican senators and representatives who voted against the Infrastructure Act, and then they got a load of money from the Infrastructure Act, and then gone out and said, look what I'm doing for the state, or look what I'm doing for my district. It's like, you literally voted against that, and now you're taking all the plaudits for it. Absolutely incredible. And that's essentially what Trump's been doing too. But anyway, there you go. That's the end of my kind of weird rambling monologue. Tom Fernby, the point is people don't use their brains or logic and make decisions based on their emotions. Yeah. It's a really good book. I've got, so one of my first books was that I wrote was on whether we have libertarian free will or not. So I don't believe that we have free will. I think we're kind of moist robots. We have the illusion of free will. We don't have free will. Don't get me started on that. I've written heaps on it before. Actually, I've written a better synopsis than my book. My book was fine. Everything in it is fine, but it was the first book I ever wrote. And so stylistically, I'm a much better writer now, and I would just rewrite that whole book. But anyway, there's another book called Are We Free by a bunch of different psychologists. It's free will from psychologists' point of view. And there's one really interesting chapter in there about automatic evaluation. And automatic evaluation is something that we do. This is where we're going on to a bit of philosophy and psychology now, but automatic evaluation is something you do when, say, for example, you're in an art gallery and you go and see a painting, and your brain makes an evaluation about the painting in like a second, right? Or 2 seconds. Within 2 seconds, you're like, yeah, it's an 8 out of 10 painting. Love it. And then, but you don't know why you love it. And then you spend the next 10 minutes looking at the painting, justifying why you like it, right? And then you go, and then when you talk about the painting to someone else, you say, I like that painting. I liked that painting because A, B, C, D, E. But that's not really why you liked it. Although you could argue that your brain was using that rationality, but it just did it automatically. It did it really quickly, and it's a non-conscious brain that's doing the work for you. And in fact, this feeds into a philosophy called epiphenomenalism. Epiphenomenalism is this idea that our non-conscious brains do most of our decision making, or do all of our decision making and work, and our consciousness, a bit like the necessary byproduct of boiling a kettle is steam, right? And if you press a button, you boil the kettle, necessarily steam comes out. With our brains, the machinations of our brains, the non-conscious brain doing all this calculation, the necessary byproduct is consciousness. The question is, does consciousness drive imagine you're a jockey on a horse. Does the jockey steer the horse, or is the horse actually steering the jockey? And epiphenomenalism states that there's an illusion that our consciousness is actually driving what we're doing, and actually it's post hoc rationalizing everything that our non-conscious brain is already deciding to do. And our consciousness doesn't decide anything, but it invents the decision making post facto. So going back to automatic evaluation, you go and look at this painting, and your non-conscious brain says 8 out of 10 painting, love it. And then you spend the next 10 minutes deciding why you liked it, and then that becomes your rationale for liking it. Whether the truth was, the rationale was your non-conscious brain decided that you liked it straight away for whatever reason the computation was, although it might include those reasons you end up post hoc rationalizing. But anyway, so there's interesting kind of different ideas of how much agency we have with our consciousness, and whether actually the consciousness has any agency. And here's an example I always give when I talk about free will, is I've just sat here and spoke to you for 1 hour and 14 minutes, right? and I haven't decided, like I've been speaking nonstop, right? Have all the words that exist in the English language that I could pick and choose from, have I chosen each individual word that comes out each time I've been speaking? No. Look, words have just tumbled out of my mouth. And what happens is I listen to those words and sometimes I go, oh, that's a good point. Oh, yeah, I like that. So my conscious brain is not deciding the words that are coming out. Otherwise, it would just take me so long to speak. I'll be like, I've just said that word. Now, which word shall I use after that? Oh, that word. Oh, which one shall I use after? Oh, that one. So the non-conscious brain has just given you literally probably 100,000, I don't know how many words I've just said, maybe 100,000 words that I've just spoken non-stop. And then my consciousness takes all the plaudits for that. It goes, yeah, well done, me. I've just spoken cogently for an hour and 15 minutes. And it turns out that it's not my consciousness, it's my non-conscious brain that's just been throwing out words. Now, it was my consciousness telling it to like generate certain ideas in this way, and then the non-conscious brain just throws out sentences, and then my consciousness goes, yeah, well done, that's what I wanted you to, you know, what's that relationship between non-conscious computation, I guess, and consciousness. But anyway, this is really not what I came on to speak to you about. I was speaking to you about Donald Trump, but you know, this is what you get when I've had a gin. Anyway, just let's go back to thanking people. The Pirate, love overscale models. Lol, Trump. Thanks, Pirate. I have to watch a Stephen Bandal video after this. Well, yeah, with your Norwegian love. He is a fellow Norwegian. And hope JP really gets to your shop before someone steals all your merch, mate. Yeah. Yes, I do hope to support Mark as well from the Little Whiskey Shop, because yeah, that's not good to have people steal from you. Anyway, now I did say this was going to last less than an hour, and then I just spoke for 15 minutes on automatic evaluation and epiphenomenalism. So you know, that's a long goodbye, isn't it? Yeah, maybe I'm not so cogently, JP. Maybe Trump levels of self-delusion. Sorry, if I wasn't cogent, yeah, it's probably, yeah, Jim for the win. Exactly. I do apologize for my lack of cogency, but I do try. Thanks to Cheryl for reminding us. atpgeo.com/donate for the next. I think that's still open for the one that we've already raised everything for, actually, for Jigger's Paw, and we're going to be starting Car for Ukraine tomorrow. So awesome stuff. Okay, well, look, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks to Mark and the Pirates and Richard Denny and Mike and my old Viewchar friend from Canada. Thank you. You're all absolute legends. And Ricky Johnson is in. And Ricky Johnson is coming in at the end there for a bit of philosophy. I've spoken to Ricky Johnson a number of times as a Lastidian former church member, and we talked about his deconversion and the recent sexual abuse scandal in the church that he was associated with and their reaction to it. Absolutely fascinating. If you want to check that out, I spoke with Ricky on my other channel, which is called A Tippling Philosopher. If you want to talk about, if you want to hear me talk about other things, you probably had quite enough of that. But thank you, Ricky, for your real generosity there, and thanks for joining in a US political shindig here. Anyway, thanks. Take care. Toodle pips.